Today's video may be slightly longer than usual. What I'm going to be doing today is I want to give a far more detailed account on how it was that I actually came to Christianity. So the first thing, where should I begin? I guess I think we'll start back when I was 11, and my older brother died at the age of 12 on May 7th. And that was one of the most horrendous days of my entire life, if not the most, if you get right down to it. And one of the things, and this is going to be important later, is I remember hating that I had parted on such bad terms with him. I had gotten a new video game the night before, and I was going off to a friend's house so that I could, just hang out, but I wanted to play the game first, and I didn't want him to play it while I was away. And then he died, and he never got that opportunity, and the only real reason that I had done that was because I was being selfish, and it made me feel terrible about that. I kept going over it and over it and over it in my mind about how, dang, what was the point of that? And I just, all the times that I had ever been mad at him, anything that I had ever, before we actually go on, that is my older brother, Zachary, for those of you who actually care. But, I kept going over it in my mind about how stupid it was to have actually gone that, just to have, held hate in my heart for my brother at any time. It made no sense to me. Now, the world itself, everything about the world, seemed pretty terrible at that point, because very shortly after that, my mom and my dad, who had been split up for a while, moved to totally different states. My dad moved to Utah, and I went with him, and my stepbrother, and my mom moved to Virginia, and she went with my little brother and my little sister. And so, 7 years-ish or so, in that vicinity. We moved when I was around 12, and about 7 years it was that I was living in Utah. So 7 years after that, I was at the worst possible place in my life. All this time, I had been letting hates build up in me. I'd hated my parents, I'd hated I'd hated my brother, I'd hated pretty much everybody. I'd hated pretty much everything about the world itself. It all seemed freaking terrible. And the only way that I had been able to really reconcile that was to say a couple of different things. First off, was to suppress the vast majority of my emotions other than hate and anger. And I got most of my enjoyment from jokes about at other people's expense, and from doing things that just were generally just wrong. And I just kind of pushed all those emotions down, because I felt like if something so terrible as my brother dying like that could actually happen in this world, I couldn't see how anything that I could do could make the world actually worse than it already was. And I hated everything about this place. I hated most of the people in it. And I had very few friends. I had difficulty making more friends. But I was always very fascinated by the debate about God. And I hated the idea that there were people out there who believed in God. I know a lot of Christians will say, these people hate God. And, a person who doesn't believe in God, to actually get into that mindset, that is a person who hates the idea that God can exist and all these terrible things can still happen. In their mind, they don't hate God specifically, or at least, I didn't hate God, openly, knowingly. There was, that subconscious idea that, I didn't really voice that often, that it was basically, I don't believe in God, but kind of thing was the thing. Like, if he's there, I didn't want to be on his side because of all the bad things that I had seen and just how things kept seeming to get worse and kept seeming to get worse. And I just decided, well, if the world is just going to be worse and worse and worse, then I can be as bad as the rest of them, I guess. And, I had no respect for any kind of authority. I had no respect for my parents' authority. I had no respect for anything. I hated the fact that my dad actually disciplined me when he caught me doing things that were wrong. And I mean that in all of its clever parabolic implications. um, like, and the more that this went on, and the more I saw, bad people getting ahead, and I saw good people getting put down, and the more I just wanted to be like, all right, fine. Well, if this is how terrible the world is, then I'm going to get mine, and I wanted to be one of those people who was going to get ahead. And one thing that was one of the first indications that there was a little bit of the whole, it's still possible that there's a God kind of thing in my mind was I would always make the joke with myself, like, hey, if you were to sell your soul to the devil for, like, what would you want to get for it? But I would always make the caveat, I would always add on the caveat that, but I would never do that kind of thing. Because whether I actually admitted it or not, I was a little bit worried, the teeny tiniest bit, that would be a step too far. And admittedly, it's a pretty obvious step too far. And at the end of the day, what I really wanted, like every time I would actually contemplate that possibility, like over and over and over again, it would always come down to the thing that, like, the devil cannot give me what I actually want. Because what I actually wanted was more power than God. Like, I literally wanted to be more powerful than him, and I figured, yeah, but if the devil's out there, then obviously the devil actually can't do that, because if he did, then why would he be talking to me? And why wouldn't he be the one who was running heaven and earth? So, there was that whole thing, and I had... Hold on one moment. There was a day... I say day. We're talking more like the last couple of years when I lived in Utah. I was descending deeper and deeper into depression because my dad went through a second divorce, and both of the divorces that I was living with my dad for. First one, I was like 5 or something like that. I just woke up. That's one of my earliest memories. Is like I wake up in the middle of the night, and I go, and like my dad's out there, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, so we need you to go with your mom now. There's police cars outside with lights flashing and everything. I have no idea what's going on." And then we go to live in a hotel for like months, and then I find out, hey, your parents are getting divorced, and you have to pick a side and all this stuff and blah blah blah, and you have to become. And that was part of what really made me hate my parents, was because, like, my mom was blatantly and openly bribing myself, my brother, and my sister. I hated the fact that she was doing it, but I still accepted the bribes kind of thing. And I hated my dad because he was actually strict and disciplined. But the second divorce, I went, I took a shower, and I came out of the shower, and lo and behold, hey, guess what? There's a divorce going on all over again. Totally out of freaking nowhere, apropos of nothing. And this stuff really, really, really started to piss me off, because it seemed like everything that could go wrong in my life was going to go wrong, regardless of what I did. And so basically I ended up descending deeper and deeper into depression. And there were some times when I actually contemplated suicide that became more and more and more and more frequent after graduating high school and going to college, and just being like, because one of the questions that I had always had that no one has ever yet given me a satisfactory answer to is, why do you only get 5 years of actual freedom before you have to be roped into school for the next 12, and then school, like college after that, plus a job, and then you get to work for the rest of your life, And then if you're lucky, you get to retire when you're too old to actually do anything, and then you get to die. And it made absolutely no sense. The utter injustice of it just kind of annoyed me greatly. It vexed me in a way that I cannot express. But where to go from here? I descended into a search because when you have actually attempted to take your own life, you either succeed or you acknowledge that something is deeply, deeply wrong inside of you and you have to change something about it. I looked as deeply inside myself as I could. I destroyed and shattered every single one of my preconceptions. And I took an honest look at what it was that I needed. And what I needed was something more than the world. But it basically came down to is a simple statement. The world was not enough. And I needed something more. So I started looking on a spiritual journey. I started looking for some kind of a spiritual enlightenment. I didn't know what exactly I was looking for, but I wanted to find something, and I wanted it to be true, and I wanted it to be real. Now, at first, I made the mistake of wanting the things of the world and the things of the spirit. That leads down the pathway of what we would call witchcraft. Bad fucking path to go on. Pardon my French right there, but it was a very, very bad time in my life, though I didn't actually realize it, because witchcraft basically attempts at things like astral projection, spiritual journeys, talking to spiritual entities, also coupled with taking large quantities of drugs to enable myself to essentially step out of my normal frames of mindset and think of things in a different way than I did before. And over time, this actually led to me being possessed by demons. They named themselves Lilith, Lucifer, and various other names that, like, the whole point is, I don't really want to get into the specifics of how such things are done, because, how do I put this? I'm not going to explain witchcraft to you because I don't want you to I don't want to give anyone ideas. But the basic point is, then I ended up picking up a Bible. Now, here's the thing that I thought was actually really the big clinching point was when it occurred to me, I accepted literally pretty much every tenet from every religion on earth except Christianity, except the Abrahamic religions. And then I actually read a Bible that I had picked up that I was looking for a way, it was just out of curiosity, out of just a thing, I've been doing all this spiritual searching and I've been having I had great experiences and horrible experiences. I actually truly experienced the duality of good and evil. And it finally occurred to me, I wanted the good without the evil. And I didn't see any way to get that because they seemed inextricably linked, and that started leading me even down to the depression path again. Because I was like, well, then evil's going to win anyway, and death will win, and death wins no matter what. Well, I finally read a Bible that I had picked up for one of my Survey of Western Cultures classes. And as I read in Revelation, the first thing I saw was a denouncement of false prophecy. And the Bible spoke to everything that was in the depths of my soul. It described things I had not said to anyone else. And most importantly, it cast out all the evil spirits that I had taken unto myself. I am a Christian now, I will be forever, and I am hoping every day to come closer to God.